In this installment of the Lowdown Sports Show, Coach Tripp stops by. We're going to be talking some college hoops. We've got a lot to go over. We're going to start with a temporary restraining order that should prove to take away maybe some power from the NCAA. Surprise, surprise. Also, the long-awaited debut after a scary situation affecting a young man who makes his collegiate debut. We've got that and a whole lot more in this installment of the Lowdown Sports Show, and it starts right now.
Okay, now, let's take it from the top.
This is the Lowdown Sports Show.
Give me the lowdown.
With Drew.
I just heard your dad might already hate you, and I was like,
Yeah.
what, brother? Oh, man.
And BJ.
Yeah, he could be a part of the mascot's entourage and be throwing T-shirts into the crowd.
And it all starts right now.
And welcome in to the Lowdown Sports Show. Normally it's my turn to go second, but Drew is away on hoops obligations himself. So I am your host, BJ. This is probably one of the few times that you'll hear that, but I am very happy to be joined tonight by Coach Tripp. Welcome back to the show, Coach. How are you, my friend?
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk a little college basketball with you, and certainly we'll miss Drew, but got a lot to talk about. Let's kick this thing off.
Absolutely, and we'll do that here in just a second. But before we get all into the college side of things, we want to make sure we remind you, give us a follow on the social medias listed right above us here on the screen. You can follow us on Threads, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook, all at the _lowdown, except for Twitch. That would be the lowdown, no underscore, on all of those social media platforms. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that this show, we want to thank our sponsors of the program. That would be TeePublic, Fanatics, and SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a ticket buying app that you can use to find your, next ticket that you want to go to, whether it be a sports show, a concert, ticket. It makes the ticket buying experience so much easier. You can go in the description, find a link in our description to go over to SeatGeek. You get $20 off your first order by using the promo code THELOWDOWN. And we also want to thank our sponsor, STATHEAD, who is going to bring you tonight's stat of the episode. So I'm always the one that has this. And thanks to our friends over at StatHead, and we're not talking NBA, but I thought that this was pretty crazy. Jaren Jackson, his last couple games for the Memphis Grizzlies, he's put up 85 points, which is third most by any Grizzly in a 2-game span. He's the second player, I should say, in Memphis Grizzly history to score 40-plus points in back-to-back games. The only other person that's done it, and he's done it both times, was Ja Morant, who did 98 in back-to-back games back on February the 26th and the 28th of 2022. And then for good measure, his next time after that on March the 3rd, he ended up with the combined total of 90 between the games on the 28th and March the 3rd back in 2022. So third most points in a 2-game span in Memphis Grizzlies history. You could also say, well, Caitlin Clark, if you're looking at maybe a college stat here, Caitlin Clark slowly moving her way up the chart. She's now 7th all time, going back to 2001 and 2002 season in terms of career points scored by any collegiate player. Ashley Jones is right there in her sights. She's about 20 points shy of becoming 6th all time. And if she tallies up another 100 points or so, she will move all the way up into 4th place. She's got a long way to go in order to try to catch up to either Kelsey Mitchell or Kelsey Plum for one of those top 2 spots, but certainly is possible. So StatHead will provide you with all kinds of stats such as those and a whole lot more that you can find to your heart's content. Thank you, StatHead, for being a sponsor of the Lowdown. All right, Coach, let's dive on in and talk some college hoops. We're going to start a little bit different here with where we're going to go. I mean, I'd be remiss. We don't have Drew tonight, but he specifically, I have the textual evidence to prove that he specifically wanted to know just what is wrong with the Duke Blue Devils. They have really, after that loss at home to Arizona, who's a really good team, I don't know what they, they haven't figured things out. They started conference playoff with just kind of a head scratching loss to Georgia Tech. And, the question is now they were preseason number 2. They've fallen all the way down to 22. Is this a little, hey, let's pump the brakes. There's nothing to worry about. This is just them finding themselves. They'll be just fine come March. Or is this something that we really need to be asking, what's going on?
For any other team, I would probably say we need to be concerned. And listen, as a diehard North Carolina fan, nothing makes me happier than have this discussion. And I wish I could have it with Drew. But listen, Duke is going to be fine. They're going to figure this out. They always do. Part of their problem, in their losses, obviously, at Georgia Tech, as you said, a head scratcher, and the Arkansas one, that's a tough place to play, obviously. Mm-hmm. But really, when you look at kind of some of the statistics that they have, in their 3 losses, they shot from the 3-point arc, behind the 3-point arc, just 26.3%. So it's tough when you're doing that, but that's not the only problem that they've had. When they're really struggling, they were combined 28 of 58, so 48.3% on layups. Okay, so that's really an anomaly. They're not going to continue down that path at all. They're going to get it figured out. But there is some things, because that's 2 things right there. And we've got another thing here. In their last 3 games, they've really struggled to share the ball. When they went on that in the first 5 games of the season, they assisted on almost 61% of their shots, and included a season best 77% against Michigan State, who obviously Michigan State is not maybe what we thought they were. But in their last 3 games, they dipped down to 43% assisting on their shots. So they've got some things to fix. Their 3-point shooting is lacking. Their assists is lacking. They're struggling to finish at the rim with these layups. So these are things, though, that you would expect a team as deep and as talented as Duke to fix. And obviously, their coach Shire is aware of this. He's going to get this fixed. So while I would say certainly it's okay to be concerned to see Duke with 3 losses before Christmas is a rarity. I don't think it's time to panic. I wish it were, as a Carolina fan, but it's not. They're going to be fine. Probably the number 2 ranking at the beginning of the season was probably a little too high. They probably weren't quite that good. Now they're sitting in the low 20s, 21, 20, I think. But they're going to be fine. They'll get it right. They'll get the ship righted, and they're going to be they'll be there in March, being a thorn in my side, I'm sure. But those are to that question, what's wrong with Duke? That's it right there in a nutshell. Their 3-point shooting is down. They've slumped a little bit with their assists on made shots, and really struggling to finish at the rim. Certainly, they're having to adjust with, his name escapes me, going to the NBA, their rim protector from last year, but they're going to get it figured out. They're too good a team. They're too talented. So they're going to be fine.
Yeah, and you look at their next opportunity that they've got coming up. It's next Wednesday. They're beginning to be hosting the undefeated Baylor Bears, who come in as a top 10 team and 9-0 to their credit at this point. But even in their wins, you look at just kind of the season overall, and it's one of those things that, it's not bad per se from downtown, because they're a 37% shooting team from behind the 3-point line just overall in the season. But when they don't fall, that's when, like you said, you were just about to, go ahead and say that they are going to struggle if they are so reliant on it from downtown. You've seen this with the other teams like Alabama and Nate Oates, where if you live and die from beyond the 3-point line, I mean, there are times where it can be very beneficial, and there are times where it's just ice cold, and there's no real in between. But this is not a Duke team, I feel like, that is reliant upon the deep ball shot.
No, they're not. And I think what's maybe happened in those games where they've struggled is, and I think it's a combination of things. So when they're not hitting, teams don't have to defend them so far out. So then they can kind of take away the paint. So it makes it harder to finish at the rim, maybe some of those layups. So obviously, just like any team, you want to be able to hit from the outside to keep those defenses honest. And the games when they haven't done it, it's hurt them. But as you said, overall, they're a good three-point shooting team, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah. And speaking of good teams, I mean, let's just for a minute, I'm going to sidetrack us just a bit because I want to talk about how good you saw firsthand with that North Carolina and UConn game just a couple, I guess, a couple of days ago, maybe a week or so, how good UConn is. But that's not even to say anything about Marquette. I think we asked this question before the season about, which conference is going to be the toughest from top to bottom. Is it still the Big East? I mean, you've definitely got the top-heavy teams that are going to be threats, and in March especially. But is it the Big East, or is it is that just those two teams, and then there's a significant drop when you look at the the Villanovas, the Creightons, and so many more that may not be up there as well?
Yeah, and early in the week, you mentioned Creighton. When the rankings came out, they were still in the top 10. They've lost since then, and so certainly I don't have them there anymore. It's kind of, if anything, that this season has taught us is that you have to have a wait and see approach. All these teams, Duke at number 2 and Kansas. I mean, they've only got the one loss at number 1, but we saw all these upsets. So I think it's really a little bit early to tell who by team, but certainly by conference, which of the conferences are going to be at the top, which are not. As you said, some of these are very top heavy. Arizona, Kansas. Obviously Big Ten. Purdue, but I don't know. Everything I've thought about this season has really not come to fruition, not been right. And I love that about college basketball because it's so unpredictable. Anything can happen. And with obviously the field of 68 once you get into March, and we saw all the upsets last year, that kind of thing. But I don't really have an answer for you about conference. I did 2 weeks ago and I did a month ago, and now I don't because it's just been kind of crazy.
Well, a couple matchups that you want to keep your eye on, not just for the Big East, but just in general this weekend. There's some huge matchups. You've got the top 10 showdown in Seattle with UConn and Gonzaga. That's tomorrow, Friday night. But then over the weekend, not just in the Big East, but you've got the CBS Sports Classic that has your Tar Heels and the Kentucky Wildcats. You've got LSU and Texas that are squaring off, which is going to be an interesting showdown out there. You've got a Michigan State team that's talented, but are they talented enough to give Baylor their first loss? They've come in 4-5, really trying to figure out their identity. And then, I mean, give credit where credit's due. Texas A&M, they're 7-3, but they got some pieces, and they can absolutely, I think, hang with Houston. Not even to mention the top 3 showdown that we're going to get in Indianapolis with Arizona and Purdue on Saturday. I mean, this is a loaded slate of games this weekend. It's going to be a great day for hoops fanatics to get their fill in for the first time really since that Thanksgiving week where we had nothing but great matchups all around. We have Coach still. Are you there?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, again, that, you know me, I'm also a college football guy, but, college football, sometimes that opening week, you'll have some good games, but then a lot of times you don't have much until conference play starts. And what we're seeing, as you said, that Thanksgiving weekend, and then this.
Try to see if we can get Coach back here and maybe in just a second. One other thing that I want to mention, while we wait, on Saturday we've got Alabama Creighton. That is one of the primetime hoops games over the weekend. That's a Fox game, as well as NC State at Tennessee. Those are some games coming up on Saturday as we are dealing with some technical difficulties for Coach Tripp. Marquette and Providence, they start up with some conference play, some Big East play on Saturday, or on Tuesday, rather, I should say, with December the 19th is when they will be squaring off. Both those teams Marquette in the top 10, and Providence, not ranked, but certainly capable of pulling off a home upset. They're coming in with a record of 8-2 as well. And as mentioned, North Carolina and Oklahoma, that's going to be another great game. That's Wednesday night. Baylor Duke. So those are back-to-back games. Big 12 versus ACC showdowns. UConn's at Seton Hall. You've got Northwestern to play in DePaul. Speaking of the Big East, if DePaul is a team that can, upset a Northwestern team that's kind of just reeling after what happened against Chicago State of all teams here in the past couple of days, then it really does remain to be seen what to expect. Villanova is at Creighton on Wednesday, and then a huge matchup between Arizona and Alabama. That's Wednesday the 20th. Those three games with Baylor, Duke, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Alabama, Arizona, bam, 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 back to back to back on the ESPN family of networks. And just trying to see if we can get Coach Tripp back in here real quick as we are dealing with some technical difficulties. I am just about to have to resend him the link and see if we can have him hop on board. But in the meantime, want to talk a little bit about Bronny James as he made his return to the basketball court and his debut with the USC Trojans. And we'll get Coach Tripp's thoughts on this as well. But it was just about 4 or so months ago. It was back in the summertime that Bronny had the cardiac arrest while he was working out. It was in July on July 24th. And he's been recovering ever since. He was on a minutes restriction, and only 140 days or so after he was rushed to the hospital and admitted to the ICU was he able to make his return to the basketball court. So it's one of those things that you absolutely love to see, and you're grateful that he was able to. You're grateful that he was able to get back out on the court and really, he didn't get to make much of an impact, unfortunately, but just the fact that he was out there is enough of a story in of itself. He put up 4 points and had 3 rebounds. He was limited to 17 minutes, and the Trojans fell to Long Beach State. 84-79 was the score in that game. He said he was thankful for everything. I think the most important thing, who cares about the win or the loss? The kid was standing tall and standing strong at the end of the game, according to what LeBron said via the Associated Press. That is a blessing in of its own right, and that is a win. He's won at life, and everything else at this point is extra credit. So you got to really tip your cap to Mr. Bronny James for being able to get back. And, I mean, it's a scary situation when you go into a cardiac event like that. We saw, it took DeMar Hamlin of the NFL. How long did it take for him to finally make it back out on the field? Obviously a different scenario and a different season length and everything like that, but it still took him longer than just 4 months to get back out onto the field, as opposed to what we saw with Bronny James. So USC is back in action over this coming weekend. They'll be playing Auburn. Bronny will still be on a minutes restriction as he eases back into playing form. You'd expect that he'll be in the starting lineup eventually, and then he'll just kind of play at that same level that USC was expecting, and when they were first wanting him to come on board. But everybody, it just has to be happy that he is out on the court and playing basketball. USC head coach Andy Enfield said, quote, "I think everybody's been through a lot emotionally, Bronny the most. He's handled it very well. And anytime you go through an emotional situation, it is nice to have teammates and a staff that can care. His teammates did a great job with Bronny. He's back now, and we're all excited for him." So one of those things that you definitely want to tip your cap and just grateful for everything that has been coming up blooming for Bronny and his team. They didn't get the win on the court, but like I said, it's one of those things that they're happy that he was able to be out there and even in just a little bit of time on Sunday. So and it's funny because LeBron was actually at courtside. He sat courtside to watch Bronny make his college debut, and that was something that really was in doubt when he had that cardiac event. But LeBron was fresh off the NBA in-season tournament title the previous night in Las Vegas and flew back to LA on Sunday and was able to make it to the arena in time to watch the Trojans and Long Beach battle it out in the Galen Center. So LeBron said it was just an emotional, draining day from the time we all woke up to the time the buzzer hit triple zeros. To see the first person out of our family, out of the James gang, to grace a college campus and a college floor, that was pretty cool. It was everything for my family. So, obviously this is huge for the James family and huge for what Bronny was hoping to accomplish in his career. Just the fact that after such what could have been a devastating setback, there was talks about people saying that maybe he shouldn't play at all, or maybe he shouldn't be, getting back to hooping, and be be able to continue his basketball career. That was something that I don't think was ever truly in question. That once he was healthy enough and the doctors had given him the all clear, that he was not going to be able to go out there and go back out on the court. I mean, it's in his blood, it's in his DNA, it's in his nature, and you just had to have expected that. Now, obviously, on the other side of things, you're looking at wanting to make sure that if you're somebody that's trying to take care of him and handle that situation best on the Trojan side of things, Coach Enfield has mentioned just a second ago, you absolutely are going to put him on a minutes restriction. You're going to keep him, very much in check until you get him ramped back up. You don't want to have him be playing 40 minutes against Long Beach State, and you especially not coming out of his first, non-scrimmages and practice type setting to be, in not a meaningless game, but in the grand scheme of things, you'd like him to work his way back up and ramp back up to where he'd want to be by the time that you get into conference play. I mean, it's the last year of the Pac-12, but it's still going to be a tough conference, a very tough top to bottom. And it's really interesting to really think about the possibilities for this USC team as they, they're still trying to figure some things out, Coach, this USC squad. But getting Bronny back, even for, just on slight minutes restriction and kind of ramping him back up into that playing form by the time that we get to conference play.
Yeah, it's really amazing that the medical advancements that he's able to come back. First of all, very fortunate. He suffered cardiac arrest that he's okay. First of all, obviously, and then he was able to come back. Really, this happened in
July, I think,
over the summer. Yeah, a very short time ago, and now he's back. A clean bill of health, so great for Bronny. His debut, 4 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds in 16 minutes in an overtime loss. But obviously, USC and the James family and everybody's really excited that he's healthy, he's back, and he can go pursue his passion, do what he loves, and certainly excited to see what he will be able to do. As you said, certainly they'll be cautious with him medically to make sure that it's safe, that he's safe and taken care of, but really excited for him to be able to chase his dreams and pursue his passion. And obviously his father, LeBron came and watched that and had to be a great moment for him and a heartfelt moment for both of them to be there and to know that what could have been an awful tragedy had been averted and now they are moving along. So really excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think that what he is capable of, you will fully expect to see that as he gets more and more comfortable, and there's not as much fear based on, how far we get removed from that event, and the healthier and stronger he becomes, we hope.
Absolutely. And now at least they're aware of this, so they'll be able to monitor it, take precautions, make sure that they are, putting him in the best position and monitoring and making sure that he's okay. So really, it may have been, depending on what caused this cardiac arrest, it may have been a blessing, not that it happened, but they identified it so that they can make sure that hopefully nothing like this ever happens again.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things that's so scary for anybody at any age, is that, an event like that is something that you just don't expect, because how could you? And for it to happen to such a young player at such a young age, and seemingly in the prime of life and in great physical health, that's something that you definitely want to, make sure if something like that were to happen, that you want to figure out what that causes. And what I understand is that there was a condition that he was, he's had since birth, but it had not, come out of the woodwork and reared its ugly head until earlier this year. But thankfully they were able to, to sort it out, and that it doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue moving forward.
Absolutely. So,
well, one last thing that we were planning to hit here in our NCAA review of the first couple of months of the season, give or take, just a couple days ago. In fact, just yesterday, the NCAA found itself in court and found itself on the losing end of a federal ruling regarding its transfer rules. The NCAA lost a decision Wednesday. They put a temporary restraining order, a federal court did, for 14 days that would allow student athletes that were previously denied eligibility for their second transfer, the transfer rule being that if you have transferred once before, the second time you have to sit out a year. So the ruling went against that and will allow some of these athletes, or most of these athletes, if not all at this point, to go ahead with their second transfer. And that's huge for some teams that were missing some of their key guys that they had brought in before the season, but because it was their second transfer, they were denied eligibility, a waiver from the NCAA. Now that is no longer the case, and the NCAA has gone ahead and said that they are not going to enforce that at all for this season. And so the association will not enforce the year-end residency requirement for multi-time transfers and will begin notifying member schools. That was what came out earlier today from the NCAA in a statement. But just going back to Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Preston Bailey in West Virginia, the one that brought all this into motion and set it up as they were trying to get eligibility for Raekwon Battle. Preston Bailey in West Virginia, U.S. District Judge, issued a temporary restraining order allowing two-time transfers to play immediately. The NCAA allows underclassmen to transfer once without sitting a year, but as a second transfer as an underclassman would require a waiver to play immediately, and the NCAA has granted waivers to certain student athletes on a case-by-case basis. And that right there, I think, is the biggest thing, because there's no consistency, Coach. They are picking and choosing on a case-by-case basis, and some of the ones that they've denied made little sense compared to some of the ones they accepted, and thus the NCAA was taken to court for, I'm going to say the Raekwon Battle decision, but it's not just him. It was, West Virginia was the one that spearheaded it, but 6 other states joined the lawsuit because they alleged that the NCAA's waiver process violated federal antitrust law, and it was found to be in their favor. So not just for Raekwon Battle, but this is a huge decision that will affect multiple teams and their ability to compete at the level that you kind of wish they had gone ahead and just given the waiver in the first place, instead of dragging their feet and preventing some of these student athletes for playing over a month into the season. Right.
And a couple of things here, first of all, we know that the NCAA is a broken and flawed system, right? They have issues all around with how they deal with student athletes, and and they always claim they're trying to keep the integrity of amateur, but that doesn't appear to be what it is. Now, I will say, there in this article I read, it says a majority of programs, though, have kept their newly eligible players on the bench out of precaution, such as Jalen Cook from LSU, who transferred from Tulane, and then the kid from UTSA and McNeese State, because there is some fear that, because this is a 14-day restraining order, that if this gets reversed, they don't want those players to then all of a sudden, have lost that eligibility and then are out. So hopefully cooler heads will prevail and they'll let these players play. We obviously, the bigger picture with transfer portal, like in football, needs to be addressed. But right now, as you said, that there's no consistency. It's not fair to these student athletes that are trying to put themselves in the best position they can for their futures. And obviously we've had this argument for years about, coaches could come and go with no penalty at all. Even if there was a buyout, boosters or alums would pay that. Mm-hmm. And so, why is it fair that they can do that and not these student athletes? So I applaud the restraining order. I just hope that it sticks. I hope that it is not reversed or overturned.
Yeah, and then that's what you were getting to with the NCAA adding yet another level to this and some more chaos potentially. They said earlier today that student athletes who participate in games during the 14-day TRO, temporary restraining order, will lose a season of eligibility if the ruling is reversed. So you're kind of at this point, you're taking it into your own hands. You think it would help, and it would, because it's one of those things that you think, based on what they had said yesterday, that they were okay to go ahead and play. But now we've got to wait for December the 27th, which 2 weeks from yesterday, when the decision came down, the 2-week restraining order or 14-day TRO. It says that the NCAA's document says whether the season of competition legislation applies to a student athlete competing during the 14-day TRO. Yes, the 14-day TRO only enjoined by law 14551 and does not change the season of competition legislation. Basically, a whole lot of jargon and legalese that we, are not privy to understanding, but it does really beg the question. Okay, you said on Wednesday that it was perfectly fine. They were not going to face any penalty for playing during this TRO. And then that immediately gets brought back, and you're just thinking, well, what the heck are you doing over there? Right. Just last night, you see Keelan Boone of UNLV. He might be in a little bit of danger if this gets reversed, because he transferred to Pacific after being at Oklahoma State to start his career, and then now he's at UNLV. Made an immediate impact, came off the bench and scored 10 points and grabbed 6 boards. You were talking about Creighton just falling the other night, and that was a large reason because of Keelan Boone and his impact. They ended up winning 79-64. So again, that my biggest thing, and we can talk till we're blue in the face, Coach, but it's not going to do a darn thing to really change how it is until we get something in place, or just some consistency from the NCAA. It's just going to continue to boggle our minds and really drive some people crazy.
Absolutely. And there's no making sense or trying to rationalize what decisions that the NCAA may or may not make, unfortunately. So, but let's be optimistic and hope that things, go the right way.
You're absolutely right about that, Coach. And let's go ahead and shift gears. We'll hop on over into Coach's Corner now, and we'll talk with Coach Tripp and see what he's got in store for us here in this edition.
All right. So this is something interesting I found as I was preparing for the show. And so obviously, if you're an NFL fan, you've heard the term Black Monday, which is kind of the Monday maybe after the regular season ends, where a lot of head coaches get let go, get fired. And so it's a tense time if the team did not have a very good year. But as I was doing some research, I found out that there has been a trend in the 2000s of something called a December surprise. And you may or may not have heard of it. But what the December surprise has been is just basically some of these power conferences have had the surprise of a coach either leaving on their own or being fired in December, which is obviously very early in the season. And so I've got some examples of that. And then the reason I'm bringing this up, I'll get to at the end of a potential another December surprise. So, so here we go. This December surprise. Here are 4 examples since 2015. All right. And then this doesn't include some of these other things that happened early in the season in October, things like that. This is just December surprises. The first one, December 15th in 2015, less than 8 months from coaching in a national title game, Bo Ryan announces his immediate retirement after a win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
Wow.
So it was Wisconsin was 7-5 at that point. Ended up on 22-13. That was kind of a stunning move. He was not fired. He resigned. A couple of years later, December 31st in 2018, Steve Alford is fired as coach of UCLA after a 15 home point loss to Liberty. The Bruins ended up going 10-10 after that, finished 17-16. So that now we've got one that was fired, one that resigned. Another one in 2021, more recently, Mark Turgeon. You may remember him he was at Texas A&M, but he was at Maryland. And he, the morning after a loss to Virginia Tech by 4, he walks into his AD's office and resigns, tired of he said the fans, the negativity, some of that stuff. And that was his 11th season there. I mean, this is a very tenured coach. And then most recently, and this ended up extending into January, but the event occurred in December. And this was, you'll remember this, December 12th, a year ago, 2022. Chris Beard had his incident and was suspended.
That's what I was just about to ask, whether that would count or if that was a January surprise. I couldn't remember.
So you could go either way. The events occurred in December. The firing took place in January. So that could go either way. But really, I don't know if you had heard of the December surprise. I had really not heard of that term. I tried to research it more. So I don't know if this is a newly coined term, but the trend was very interesting that pretty early in the season, these coaches are either deciding on their own or are often being let go by their athletic directors. One team was 7-5, 12 games into a season where you're probably going to have, close to 30 games total. So the reason I bring that up is oftentimes, particularly when the coach is fired, it is due to performance issues. It is due to wins and losses. Obviously, it can also be due to off-court instances, as we saw with the Beard thing. So there is a coach, and I'm going to see if you can, as I describe some stuff, see if you can say who it is, who's had a pretty good wins and loss record, done a good job, but has had some altercations with other coaches, other players who may be a little bit on the hot seat. Do you know which coach I'm talking about? You'll know as soon as I say it.
Well, the first guess, that if I had to make one guess, and I only get one guess, the first name that I thought of is Juwan Howard. Is that correct?
You are exactly correct. Good job.
All right.
So here's the deal. Here's what happened. So fairly recently, this past week, there was an altercation, a non-physical altercation between Juwan Howard and the team's strength and conditioning coach. Okay. And as a result, Juwan Howard he traveled with the team after this incident. He still isn't back to coaching yet because he had some heart surgery back in September. Okay. The conditioning coach did not travel with the team. They're both still employed. It was specified that it was a non-physical interaction. Okay, so that begs to the question, well, then what's the big deal? Well, because of these instances he's had in the past, one with Mark Turgeon, and then one after, I think, a Michigan State loss, Juwan Howard has been put on, and for the last year and a half, under a zero tolerance contract. So the thought here is could we be having a December surprise with a Power 5 coach right now this December based on this incident with a member of his own staff, or at least Michigan's own staff, based on he's had these other instances in the past and been put on this zero tolerance thing. I don't think anybody questions his X's and O's coaching ability, but he certainly has a reputation as maybe a hothead. And if you're on that zero tolerance, we talked my last time on with the Bobby Knight instance, that, if you don't address it, you are accepting it. You're approving it, even if it's a silent approval. So if you put somebody on the zero tolerance, if this issue is significant enough, you have to take action, or you're sending a message that it's not really zero tolerance, and you can get away with it, because now if something else comes up, you don't have a leg to stand on, because wait a minute, there's no consistency. You allowed this last one to happen. Why not this one?
Well, zero consistency, it just sounds like the NCAA all over.
It does sound like the NCAA. It absolutely does. So I want to tie all this into, so this is called the December surprise. I don't really have an idea. I don't know enough about it, whether or not Juwan Howard will be let go. I would suspect not, because it doesn't sound like it was maybe as big a deal as some of those others. But this leads me into surprise teams early in this season. So we went from December surprise to best and worst surprising teams so far. Awesome. So we've talked about a couple of them. And so we'll talk about maybe the ones that are biggest disappointment, surprising by not living up to expectations. And then we'll talk about some that have lived up. So I got to go. Sorry, Drew. I'm going to say Duke is kind of the biggest disappointment, not living up to it. We talked about some of the reasons why. Their three-point shooting, not finishing at the rim, the assists in their losses. They began the season ranked at number 2. They were 7-3, and their losses. Obviously, they have a loss to Arkansas, obviously Arizona, but that Georgia Tech loss is really baffling. The first time they've had 3 losses before Christmas in several years. I think it's back-to-back years maybe. But this is really a head scratcher just because of the talent that they have. My second biggest surprise on the disappointment side is Michigan State, sitting at 4-5, 0 wins over teams in like the top 60 power ranking. Wow. So they're just with a coach of that caliber, with the recruits that they can get in, for them to be sitting at 4-5. We thought that opening night loss was just an anomaly. Things happen, emotion, that kind of thing, but they have not righted the ship. They are not looking very good. And this thing could spiral out of control very quickly if they don't get that fix. And I don't know that they can. I think that something like this, when you've got the talent, you've got the coaching, this seems like maybe a belief, desire, culture issue, where, not to say that they've quit on the coach, or maybe they've quit on each other, or they don't have a belief, but they're certainly more talented than this 4-5 record.
Absolutely. And one thing that I was going to bring up, I don't mean to go backtrack or anything like that, but we were talking about Juwan Howard. And the thing to me that I was thinking is that, it's maybe not a zero tolerance in terms of, if like you were saying, if it's, the non-physical incident was maybe just like they had a verbal shouting match or something like that. That may not be necessarily enough, but his win-loss record, and he has he's got the good intangibles as a coach, but his record would almost indicate otherwise. And you felt like he was more on the hot seat for performance as opposed to just solely because of disciplinary, in my opinion, at least. Okay. So that's a good point, because that makes it easier too, when you want to tie in, if you do want to let a coach go, look, you're not winning, and we've got these other issues that you're supposed to be setting an example, modeling the behavior you want from these young men, and you've consistently demonstrated that you can't handle that. So no, that's an excellent point. All right, so I've got some teams now on the more positive side that I think are surprises in a good way, that maybe have overperformed what maybe we thought.
One I have, and I'll talk about them a little bit later too, is Clemson, sitting 10-0.
Yep.
And two teams that they beat were undefeated at the time, South Carolina and TCU.
Yeah, I was just about to say I saw that, and TCU's no slouch this year. They're Clemson is just legitimately that good. The games that I've gotten to see from them, I think that they're a true contender up there at the top of the ACC this year.
I do too. My next one, record-wise, they're 7-3, and so you would say, well, that's probably not all that good. It's Tennessee, but their losses are to number 2 Purdue, who was Purdue 2 at the time, number 1 at the time Kansas, and 17 North Carolina. So they Tennessee, I think, are maybe outperforming where I expected them to be. Certainly those losses, but those are, if there's such thing as a good loss, those are good losses.
The toughest strength of schedule, or one of the toughest strengths of schedule. Did they play Marquette? Did they win that game? Is that Marquette's only loss so far, or one of their two? Because I was going to say, I swear I remember maybe when they were over in Maui.
No, I think Marquette lost to Purdue, maybe. Purdue and Wisconsin, I think, is what I have.
Maybe. I can double check.
Let's see here.
Thought you might know for sure. It's no worry.
Okay.
But yeah, the Tennessee team is for sure. I think that they're up there as one of the teams to definitely keep an eye on.
And then I've got two from smaller conferences. One, we talked about them in football. I got to talk about them here. They're 9-0, and that's James Madison out of the Sun Belt Conference. Great story that school is having. Success in football, success in basketball, and then Drake 9-1 in the MVC, the Missouri Valley Conference. So Drake is typically there, but another great start for them. And so I really wanted to have more positive surprises than negative. And so I think those teams, Clemson, Tennessee, James Madison, and Drake have really started strong. Tennessee is a little bit of an anomaly, but I gave them a nod because of their losses were to some really tough teams. And so, again, some of this stuff will factor into my top 10 list when we get to that. But I really wanted to, tie this back into the Coach's Corner, the December surprise, and then that's with coaching, and then we've got the early season surprises, disappointment surprises, and maybe exceeding expectation surprises on the positive side.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a December surprise. Now I'm really going to be keeping my eye out, especially if I'm looking at you, Mr. Juwan Howard. Maybe would you think that a pedigree coach like Tom Izzo, with the struggle that they've had so far this year, would he be somebody that you might keep an eye on? Maybe not firing, but I would say more like the route Bo Ryan took potentially.
Yeah, I think I read something that he has made, 20-something straight March Madness appearances or something like that, something crazy. Mm-hmm. I would think that, if it was going to go that way, I think that it wouldn't be now. I think both sides would allow it to play out to the end of the year just based on what he's done. But I get the impression from what I know about him, which is nothing, but just my perception of him is that he would not want to leave on a down year like that on his own. So I would expect him to, certainly be back.
Absolutely. That's just kind of, you talk about what would be a real big surprise.
Yes,
that would be him. Maybe even more of a surprise than Jimmy Boeheim. The timing was there, but you really didn't feel like it was his decision at Syracuse. But all right. Well, good stuff, Coach. Teams that are having a hot start to their year is definitely something that we are surprised by a couple of those teams. But what you shouldn't be surprised by is some of the deals that you can get right now. You go over to our friends at TeePublic. You can get yourself some Christmas shopping done. You've got to hurry. We got a ticking clock. We're about 10 days or so away from the holidays. And before too long, you're not going to be able to get that merch to you in time, or to your to whoever is receiving that present in time. So time is of the essence. You can also right now take up to 35% off site-wide. But again, we talk about a ticking clock promotion. This deal is only going to be good through Friday. So if you're listening live, you got to hop on this opportunity now. Be on the lookout I think it ends at midnight Pacific time Friday, so about 3 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Central equivalent your time. But basically, it accounts to, if you're not listening live, you probably missed it. You can get $16 shirts right now. You can go get yourself a Lowdown shirt. Go get yourself a Lowdown mug. That's one of those benefits of going over to TeePublic, is it's not just a shirt. They've got stickers. They've got mugs. They've got anything that your heart's desire within reason that you can find. I mean, it's getting cold. I'm going to need that Lowdown hoodie or maybe even the crew neck sweatshirt to keep myself warm as we get ready for what could be a very frigid winter. And I know my man Drew is up there rocking that in South Dakota because he knows it's cold up there in the Dakota. So find that over at our shop at TeePublic in the description. And if you're looking for some other sporting apparel and, you know, maybe some more stocking stuffers or gifts for friends and family, check out Fanatics as well. Right now, they've got another ticking clock promotion. Right now, you can get 25% off, no minimum order purchase necessary. You get 25% off everything. And if you order over $50 worth of merch tonight, it ends at the end of the night, 11:59 Eastern, you're going to be able to take 35% off, or 30% off, I should say. Make sure I get that number right. 30% off orders over $50. You're going to want to use the promo code JOLLY, as in Holly Jolly Christmas. You can order it today. It will be to your destination by Christmas. You want to get a, well, you know, there's the winter meetings really heated up in Major League Baseball. Shohei Ohtani is a Dodger. Juan Soto is a Yankee. I mean, it's going to be tough for me to keep track of where everybody is. But when I start seeing Dodger Ohtanis and Soto Yankee jerseys, that's going to help me out. You can get that over Fanatics. You can get yourself some bowl gear. It's time for Texas and Washington to match up in the Sugar Bowl, or Michigan and Alabama in the Rose Bowl. There's other conference championship merchandise available, as well as some other teams that have made their way into the postseason. You can find it all at Fanatics. Plus, if you become a Fanatics MVP, you've got more ways to save with Fan Cash Plus. You can turn your everyday shopping into even more Fan Cash, and you'll get exclusive weekly deals not available to little lowly peasants like myself. But you're going to want to go over to fanatics.com. Again, 25% off everything right now through the end of the night. 30% off orders over $50 by using the promo code JOLLY. You find that over at fanatics.com in our description. Fanatics.com, officially licensed everything. And now, Coach, we're going to turn it back over to you because it's time to find out the latest installment of Trips Top 10. I almost messed that up. Trips Top 10.
Either way is great. All right. So again, just a refresher, you know, I'm trying to look at body of work from just this season, notwithstanding necessarily where they were ranked when they started, just what they've done, what their body of work is. So some of the stuff is, you'll see, is pretty consistent, but some of it is a little off. So here we go. Number 10, I've got the Clemson Tigers. Okay, sitting at 10-0. They had the win against Bama. We already talked about the two undefeated, South Carolina and TCU. So I have them sitting at number 10 with that 10-0 mark. Number 9, I've got the Oklahoma Sooners sitting at 9-0. Their best win over then. I know I just said 23 was Bama, but obviously these rankings change. Number 23 USC team. So that's my number 9. My only number 8, my only team with 2 losses in this top. No, it's not true. I've got 2 of them. It's Carolina, 7-2. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased to them, but they've got wins over number 10 Tennessee, number 20 Arkansas, and one of their losses was number 5 UConn. So yeah, and they're playing pretty well right now. I've got them sitting at number 8. They do have the 2 losses, but one of them's to UConn, and they've got some I think better quality wins maybe than Oklahoma and Clemson.
I was to say that Arkansas win is something that Duke couldn't do.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you won't see Duke on this list, I promise you that. Not this week. Baylor, the number 7, sitting at 9-0. They're looking really good. follow that up with another Texas team. I've got Houston sitting at 10-0. Hard to deny how well they're doing.
Yeah.
So far we've got Clemson, Oklahoma, Carolina, Baylor, and Houston. And number 5, you mentioned them just earlier. I've got Marquette sitting at 8-2 with quality wins over number 23, the Illini, number 1, Kansas, number 12, Texas, and their losses are to Purdue and Wisconsin. So really quality wins. And again, if you can have a good loss, Purdue is it.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, I've got UConn sitting at 9-1, who, man, I mean, Arizona's there, but UConn, I think, when it's all said and done, is definitely going to be making a case. But right now, I got them at number 4. They've got wins at number 9, UNC, number 15, Texas, and their loss is to Kansas, who we'll see a little bit later. So they're really looking solid. I struggled with where to put UConn, and I can't believe I did this because I said I wasn't going to fall for it, but I put Purdue at 3. In hindsight, I should have flipped them, but I'm trying not to drink the Kool-Aid with Purdue because they burn me every year, but they're sitting at 9-1. They've got wins against Gonzaga, which is number 11, number 7, Tennessee, number 4, Maryland. They do have a loss to a win against Marquette, I guess, and a loss to Northwestern. Number 2, I've got Kansas at 9-1. 2 wins versus top 5 teams at the time, UConn. And then also Tennessee, and then number 17, Kentucky, which Kentucky, I'm not sold on them. That's maybe not as good a win as we thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the consensus number 1, if it's not a consensus, it should be, is Arizona, 8-0, 2 wins versus top 25, Duke and Michigan State, which we talked about is really, they don't probably even deserve to be there. But they're playing really good basketball right now. You mentioned earlier Marquette. Obviously, I'm really high on them, but I really think UConn is going to work their way back up. I think they're so talented. So this was not meant to be a slight on them because I think that they're going to be probably in that top 2 or 3 by the end of the season going into the tournament. But just based on, I'm trying to do it on the body of work so far, and I gotta watch myself with that Purdue pick because they burn me every year. But that is my pick. So I think that the top spots are pretty consistent, but I think, kind of 8, 9, and 10, maybe a little different, bringing in Clemson, Oklahoma, maybe higher than some. But, I mean, I don't think you can argue how well they're playing. They're undefeated. They're beat some ranked teams, beat some undefeated teams. So that is Tripp's top 10 for this week.
Well, Coach, I'm gonna want to ask you about it a little bit. So not just because of not wanting to buy into the Purdue hype, but is this Arizona team different than the teams that always seem to do so well in the regular season, but then fall apart when they get into either the second round or the Sweet 16 in the tournament? This feels like it's a different year for Arizona, but I think we felt this way in the past, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Arizona is a little bit like that, but it seems like right now that they're on cruise control. I guess the only thing to be wary of is that old adage, and I don't know if it's legitimate or not, but are they peaking too early? But they are definitely setting themselves apart with their style of play, how they're winning, their aggression. So I'm sold on them right now. But if you ask me, would I be surprised if Kansas, UConn ends up ahead of them? I would say no, but I definitely think Arizona is going to be in the mix and probably not be a 1 and 2 and done in the tournament. I do think it does feel different, and I think it is different.
So you said UConn just a slight little bit below Purdue at this point. How close are these? Because it feels like you were even kind of kicking yourself about Purdue being ahead of UConn. Is it just that thin between 2 through 4?
Yeah,
5?
I think it is really that thin. And it's almost a coin flip for me between those two, but I really think 3, 4, and 5. I think you could mix up Purdue, UConn, and Marquette, how they're playing right now, kind of in any order, and I wouldn't argue too much. I don't know that I'd put Marquette at 3 just yet, but I could see them at 4, and I could see UConn at 3. The hard thing would be, I don't know that by moving Purdue all the way back to 5, but I think those 3 teams are really close. I think Marquette's a little on the outside looking in right now, but they're playing really well. And so I guess really Purdue and UConn, to your point, it's a razor thin margin. And if they go to play, particularly on a neutral site, it's a pick 'em. It's not one where I would say, okay, well, Purdue's got this or UConn's got that. I think they're both so talented and so fun to watch. I probably would go and this is more of a bias, I'd probably pick UConn right now, but that's just because I've picked Purdue so many times and feel like I get burned. So that's not very scientific.
All right. Well, last but not least on this discussion, give us a team or two that's just on the outside that you feel has a really good opportunity to climb into that top 10 the next time that we are going to be discussing this when we get to conference play and knee deep in the season come January. Yeah.
Two teams that could, depending on how things go, would be Gonzaga. And again, we talk every week, every time I'm on. I'm a big Mark Few guy, but I think they're underperformed. But I definitely think they could get in. And I think Florida Atlantic. I think both of those teams could make a case, particularly if we've got these. If Carolina loses again, I could see them on the way out. And then if Clemson or Oklahoma has kind of a bad loss. And then Gonzaga has a good win. They could make that argument, particularly if it's over several games. So those would be the two, Florida Atlantic and Gonzaga, who I would look for. And
both of them have been in the top 10 at some point earlier this season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and the team I would say don't fall for, because their big name is, I don't think Kentucky is very good this year. I say very good. They're top 25, but they're not Kentucky of the past. So, if they get a couple of wins, I would be hesitant to automatically move them in because I don't think they've played Kentucky basketball this year.
They were struggling with A&M Commerce for a good while, and this is not the same, level of success that A&M Commerce and Kentucky have had all time. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on. All right, Coach, thanks for the top 10. It's a good one, as always. We appreciate it, but it's time to play a little game. It's one of our favorites around here. In fact, we make sure we try to play it every week on the show. Coach, are you ready to play a little with it or quit it?
I am ready. I don't want to quit it. I want to be with it. I want to be with the game.
All right. Well, you're going to be with the game and you're going to be playing the game. It's going to be 5 questions. They might all have a common theme. I think you'll pick up on it pretty quick. So whenever Coach is ready, we'll start with question number 1.
All right. I'm ready. Let's have it.
All right. Here we go with question number 1 for Coach Tripp. And Coach, the best Christmas movie. We're in the holiday season. The best one that you watch every year. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. With it or quit it?
Ooh, I do watch that every year. And at our house, we are big into Christmas movies. We watch tons of them. And I would say that is definitely the first one we watch. And we watch it more than once. Best one. Ooh, that's so tough. I'm going to say with it because it is so traditional. There's others that, I love Elf. I love It's a Wonderful Life. I love Scrooged, but I always start with National Lampoon's National Vacation. Sometimes watch it as early as Thanksgiving, watch it several times. So I'll go with it just because it's so traditional and it's one that I start with.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of my favorites. I know Drew is a big Once Upon a Christmas fan. I think that's his favorite. But I figured, we got you on here. Want to see if you've got a different thought. You did. So, Drew, Coach Tripp, with it on the first question. We shift gears. We'll go question number 2. Coach, keeping things on this side of it. The NFL has no business scheduling Christmas Day games unless Christmas occurs on a natural day that you'd expect NFL games to be on. With it or quit it. Like, for instance, next year, Christmas is on a Wednesday. There should not be NFL games on Christmas Day next year compared to how it was a Sunday last year and Monday this year.
Right. I am with that. Obviously I would love to be able to sit around and watch football, but I mean, Christmas is such a special time, and these guys want to be with their families as well. So I think if it falls on a Sunday, if it falls on a Monday, which I don't even know if you would have Monday at that late in the season, but if it falls on a Sunday, go with it. That's part of the job. But if not, I would say don't schedule that. Let these guys go spend some time with the family. Now, I know that I think the NBA does it, and I kind of wish they wouldn't, but that's not my call. But I would be with the NFL, not, so I don't know how you phrased it, but I'm with them not scheduling it unless it's a natural Sunday.
Yeah, so that you're just with it. That's basic. That was the question. This year it is on Monday, and there are 3 games, believe it or not.
Wow.
There's one prime time, one like early, and then it's basically like a rinse and repeat of Thanksgiving. There's 3 games,
Right.
one early, one afternoon, one late. So,
well, I'd be lying, even though I don't want them on there, I'd be lying if I said I won't watch them.
well, I understand that, Coach. We'll move on, and we'll do question number 3 for Coach Tripp here on With It or Quit It. All right, Coach. Ham is to Christmas what turkey is to Thanksgiving. With it or quit it?
Huh. Okay, I'm gonna go with it, but I don't think it should be.
Okay.
But I think it. I mean, I think it is very traditional, and you even if you don't have it at your house, you see it in movies all the time. We just watched Christmas with the Cranks last night or the night before, which based off of John Grisham Skipping Christmas, and that was a big thing. Get the ham, get the ham. And I know like sometimes at our school district they'll give us honey glazed spiral ham. So I would say it is certainly traditional. Doesn't need to be. It's not really my favorite, but sort of like the NFL on Sunday. If it's there, I'll eat it. But it's not my favorite. I don't really know why it's so traditional, but I think it is. It is to Christmas as turkey is to Thanksgiving.
All right. Well, this is very interesting. We've gotten 3 for 3 so far. Coach Tripp has been with them all 3 times. We'll see if that trend continues as we move into question number 4. Coach, you're talking about the NBA. They always play Christmas Day games. That's part of their traditions. And the best NBA matchup on Christmas Day this year is Celtics-Lakers. With it or quit it?
Ooh, that's a
I
great.
can give you the full slate. We'll be talking about it next week on the show, but that has to be in maybe to some people. But do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, it is kind of part of their tradition. I remember years ago, and Drew might remember this. He's younger than I am, but I know he's a big Spurs and Tim Duncan fan. Not really. I know he's not a Mavs fan, but I remember Tim Duncan was like, "Why?" Or no, it was David Robinson maybe. Why are we playing on Christmas? So the thing is, it's part of their tradition, but I don't think it always was part of their tradition. I think it's probably within the last 20 years, I think. Again, we've gotten used to it. So, again, I'll watch the games they're on. I kind of wish they weren't, but I'll be with it just because I'm used to it. I think that's a great matchup. They do, I think, a good job of usually putting on some primetime type games. So, so I'll go with that just because, like you said, it is something they've done a long time. And it isn't like the NFL where they're altering a normal schedule, to get this captive audience. NBA plays every day anyway. So,
well, before you say with it, I'll give you the other matchups. This was the best matchup for this year's Christmas Day. Okay. So before you say with it or quit it, either way, you start off with the Milwaukee Bucks at the New York Knicks. Then you've got Golden State at Denver. Then you get the Boston at the Lakers. Boston at LA is the kind of that late afternoon window that is the marquee matchup. You got Philadelphia at Miami, and then the last game of the night, the late game, if you will, is Dallas at Phoenix, Mavericks at Suns. So is the Celtics at Lakers the best matchup of those 5? And if it is, with it or quit it.
Yes, it is I say the best matchup by far, I think, in that game.
Right.
So I'll be with it.
Okay. 4 for 4. Was not expecting this, Coach. You might have a chance to do something that doesn't happen around here too often. We'll see. We got question number 5.
Oh, here we go.
With it or quit it for Coach Tripp. I can't believe that this is the question I came up with because I feel like this is going to be for sure a 5er for 5. But, Coach, the look on someone else's face while they unwrap your present to them is truly the best part of Christmas. With it or quit it.
Ooh.
You struggle with this one?
I know it's so close because obviously that I mean, you're making somebody else happy. But then I think I guess it all ties into when the being with your family is really, you could go be with your family, and it's really not about the gifts. If you have children, if you have young children, or maybe your significant other, my wife, if I get her something that look on her face, yes. But on the other hand, like exchanging with siblings and stuff, it's cool, but it's really about being with them, I think. So, I mean, I hate to do this, but I'm gonna quit it. I'm gonna say that for me, it's just because I mean, and probably Drew will experience some of this. Like when you're away from your family a long time, and you get to see them, you haven't seen them in a long time. It's really about being with them, and telling stories, and if you've lost someone, reminiscing about them. So I say really that for me, that's the best part is the memories and being with family and people you haven't seen. Dang it.
I certainly respect it. I didn't know that was going to be the one. Okay. I didn't write it in any sort of way to get a response. So it's all fair in the game of with it or quit it. But that's a really great answer, because there's a lot of things that make the holiday so great, and that's to me has always been one of them. But having here in the last couple of years, I lost my granddad, and so that's kind of been the biggest part of not just for us getting together and spending time and everything like that, but thinking about who's not there that should be.
Right.
So I can definitely understand and relate to that. But well, Coach, we made it through. This has been another exciting edition of The Lowdown. Thanks so much for hopping on board and catching us up on what all has occurred and across the college side of things. And we'll be sure to be talking some more college hoops here pretty soon. In fact, just at the start of 2024, we'll be back to get more college hoops from you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me. Had a great time. Have a great holiday season. Merry Christmas to you. And Drew, Absolutely. You're not here, but Merry Christmas to him and his family as well.
Yes, and we wish the same to you as well. Before we go, I want to make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Go ahead and hit follow on The Lowdown. And, well, if you're on Apple, Spotify, those are the two most popular platforms. Why don't you give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review if you're on Apple. But whether you're on Apple or Spotify, you can give us a rating, and we hope we've earned a 5-star rating from you. And don't forget, if you're over on YouTube, to like, subscribe, and comment to our videos here on The Lowdown. And, well, as talked about earlier, next week, Drew and I will be back. We'll be talking the NBA Christmas Day slate. We probably are going to have to mention Draymond's, foolishness. You would expect he made another unfortunate decision. I know that's going to be something that'll be talked about. Plus, hey, there was the WNBA draft lottery, and well, Drew may have called what was in the cards for this year. That's going to be a lot of fun. He'll be back next week with us. But until then, this has been another edition of the Lowdown Sports Show, and we'll catch you next week.